Our overall environment consists of everything around us, from the physical things that we interact with, to the air that we're breathing, and the people that we spend time with. So of course, it's one of the most influential factors in both developing and affecting a person's overall mental health. So with this in mind, consider what your life might be like if you had to live in just one room, or if you had nowhere to live at all, or how you would experience things if your air was full of paint fumes every day, or how would you feel if your favorite person treated you exactly opposite of how they regularly do? How do you think that would affect your mental health in the end?
An idea.
An escape.
Ideas are bulletproof.
Hello, my name is Becca, and today on A Life Learned, I want to talk to everybody about how incredibly influential and important our environments are on our overall mental health, and with that, how we can work on addressing issues within our environment to try and improve our mental health and help us in healing through any mental illnesses that we might be facing. So for starters, just in terms of the physical environment that we deal with, having to deal with noisy, crowded environments can have a huge impact on someone's mental state overall. It's been proven that those who deal with noisy environments have higher rates of fatigue, they're more annoyed, and generally less patient. They tend to often have higher blood pressure and higher stress hormones. And similarly, living in crowded spaces has been found to have an overall adverse effect on people's general moods and can lead to stress-related illnesses. And of course, it seems obvious that both a noisy and crowded environment tend to come sort of hand in hand, and so with this, it basically means that your location is a really big factor in the type of environmental stresses that you deal with. And of course, your location also relates to the type of temperatures that you have to face with, and generally how safe you feel in your particular neighborhood. And unfortunately, these are actually all things that are typically influenced by your culture and your social class. Where you sit on the socioeconomic hierarchy of society tends to decide how many environmental stresses that you have to deal with on a regular basis, because it basically decides how much money you can spend on your housing, and thus what level of quality you're able to actually look for in the type of location that you're living. And another thing about culture that affects a person's overall mental state is just the impact of religion in that sense. Some cultures force certain religions on people, and that can actually be helpful. That it provides them with community and support, but other people find it stressful, and in that sense it can have a negative impact on their mental health. And further, the social class of a person actually tends to depict how they'll be treated in society in general, and this really impacts a person's mental health, because how people treat you tends to really influence how you feel about yourself, and thus your overall mental state as you carry yourself through life. And so one demographic that this affects most heavily would be children, of course, because their environment has a lot of impact on how they develop and grow, particularly in their relationships and their abilities to develop healthy attachments. And so an improper environment growing up can lead to children actually beginning to develop mental health issues, such as complex post-traumatic stress disorder or childhood PTSD, as well as a plethora of other anxiety or personality-related disorders. Unfortunately, these states of anxiety can lead to easy irritability, and this can lead to children often isolating or disengaging from a lot of developmental situations, and that can actually lead to having learning difficulties. So in this sense, environment is exceptionally more pivotal for children, because it really bases the foundation that they have to grow with and work with for the rest of their life. And particularly in cases of children, when they're surrounded by certain behaviors, it can perpetuate in their future behaviors, because it was the example that they had. It's all that they really had to learn by. And so in a child seeing someone being abusive, that could possibly lead them to later be abusive themselves, because that was the behavior they learned. It is of course also possible to learn from someone else's behavior and not be abusive because you were abused, but it's not uncommon to learn those behaviors because that's the way you were also treated when you were younger. And whether it's a child or not, behaviors kind of tend to beget the same behaviors. And so if someone's being abusive and they're in an unhealthy mental state, this could lead others to respond in equally abusive manners. Whereas if someone is being supportive and understanding, that tends to perpetuate more understanding environments. A really good conceptual framework to explain how the environment tends to generally impact a person's behavior and thus their mental state is the reasonable person model, which connects people's behaviors to their environment in general. general. And this model basically says that people act more reasonable or mentally healthy when the environment supports their needs. And it goes on to expand on these needs in the sense that all people inherently need understanding and exploration. And the way the environment supports or hinders these needs affects everything from a person's overall behavior to their general mental state and well-being. So in this sense, we truly do need understanding in order to have a healthy mindset. And when we don't have people around us who are understanding of our mental health issues, it can actually hinder our recovery or our ability to cope with such conditions. And our overall need to explore is basically based on our human instinct to want to be able to anticipate what's going to happen and thus respond within a suitable amount of time in most situations. And so we're always wanting to explore to get more information for such things. But at the same time, we also have a keen tendency to prefer what's familiar to us as well. A very fascinating thing about human nature is the role that familiarity plays in our overall cognition. Exploration, when pursued within familiar realms, can be a great way for us to expand our understanding, and as I was saying, thus get that information that we want in order to anticipate what's going to happen in situations. So in that sense, it is essential, but we have a familiarity bias that can work against it a lot of the time. This familiarity bias is based on a general mental model that we already have of these situations, based on the weaknesses and strengths that we've already established that we have within such things. And so it can make it hard to expand and explore into new things when we're basing it off of previous experiences and things that we've already learned. And it's kind of an explanation of why some people are afraid to expand out and try new things, because this familiarity creates a comfort, and thus expanding outside of it can be fearful when we don't know what to anticipate. But you can break free of it. It is possible. It just takes a lot of work, and trying to seek exploration as much as you can while also remaining within familiar zones can be a good way to start. Another thing that the reasonable person model explains is that our mental states or our reasonability tends to become unhinged when we can't handle the stimulus around us. And in this sense, like I was saying before, this makes it difficult for us to anticipate what's going to happen in situations and know how to react. And this often leads to feelings of confusion or incompetence in people, which can lead to states of anxiety and stress, and of course, generally just upset your mental state overall. And a final point that the reasonable person model mentions that I thought was really significant in terms of someone being able to maintain their mental health within their environment is being able to feel like they're able to contribute to their environment and actually be a part of it. It's that overall desire to have purpose or meaning, and this really impacts someone's overall mental state in that it's just hard to continue on and to be happy with life or to feel good about yourself when you don't feel like you have purpose or that anyone wants you around. But this can be addressed by seeking more opportunities to try and have a meaningful impact on the overall environment around you. Of course, finding these opportunities can be limited by your location, but seeking them out is a good first step. And they don't have to be huge. You just have to feel like you're having some kind of impact on your environment or on your overall community. And the idea with this is to improve your mental state by feeling like you're being listened to, respected, and that you're actually making a meaningful difference in the space around you, in the world around you. And in the end, that you have some sense of place in the social groups that you surround yourself with. These are huge things in contributing to someone's overall mental health, and so they're definitely an area to work on, and they can be worked on with a little bit of effort and in seeking help by just reaching out to others. So in the end, the model basically explains that when the environment doesn't support our overall needs, we can start to become unreasonable, unhinged, or mentally unstable, and it can start to lead to the development of mental illnesses. And this is all basically around the different stressors that you experience in your environment, as I had previously mentioned. And so stress management is a big thing to consider when addressing the issues that you have with your environment and how they impact your mental health. You need to address what you find stressful, why you find it stressful, because different people find different things stressful, and how you can take control of these different things that are causing you stress, or why you need that control, because that's another thing to very much consider in terms of why it's stressing you. And so once you've identified what causes you stress or what you feel you need control of in your environment, try to start writing those things down, like actually make it a visual for you to look at in terms of what you find stressful each day. When you start to find yourself getting stressed, stop and write it down, what's bothering you. And then you can have the opportunity to assess all the different things in your environment that are an issue for you, and thus have the ability to prioritize on what you're able to take more control of and what you don't need so much control of, and in general what you can personally do to reduce that stress that you're facing and improve your overall mental health through the environment that you deal with every day. It's been proven over and over that stress really can be a killer. If it's allowed to last too long, chronic stress can have huge impacts on both your mind and your body in making existing health issues worse or starting new health issues. And a couple examples of chronic stress that you might not have originally thought of as chronic stress are experiencing chronic depression or not having a good level of social support. So these are two things to very much consider in reaching out for help if you're experiencing a lot of chronic depression, or if you're having difficulty and don't have very much social support. That is an incredibly important part of someone's ability to maintain a good mental state, and so it is a really good idea to try and build your social networks and the different people that you have in your life, if at all possible. I know firsthand that relationships can be a big source of stress, but they can also be a stress buffer too. Having someone to just listen to you and just care that you're suffering makes a huge difference. So when you're experiencing chronic stress, when you're having an issue with your environment that you can't address on your own, chronic depression, or just having issues feeling connected to other people, reach out to friends and family as much as you can, because maybe they can help you address some of the things within your environment that are affecting you, and maybe even help you take steps in order to change it. You never know if they might have a new idea or just a different perspective on the issues that you're facing. Reaching out for support is one of the greatest ways to deal with all the different issues that can happen when facing a mental illness and when you find that your mental state seems to be breaking down. So it's always worth reaching out and asking for help. It's also been proven to be really good for your mental health to go and walk in nature, and if you can, find some grass and take your shoes off and just walk about and enjoy nature for how wonderful and peaceful that it can be. Just relax, maybe take a book with you, go sit down somewhere and get away from all the concrete and all the people and just enjoy nature. And you may find a lot of tension that you're dealing with on a regular basis really comes off of you when you're in a more nature-y setting. And in the end, if you're still struggling with your stress and with your overall mental health issues in the environment that you're facing, it might be worth your time to go seek professional help. I know I was experiencing a lot of issues with my environment, and my therapist helped me get a perspective on what I was able to do about it and how I was able to take control of certain things that were having really negative effects on me, so that I could start moving forward and healing better with my PTSD and my different mental health issues. So it might be worth your time to seek the help and advice of some kind of mental health professional. You certainly don't have to start seeing them regularly, but even just going to them for the current issues that you're facing can be huge in making some forward steps in improving your overall mental health in general. So in the end, what's most important is making sure that your needs are met, that you have loving, caring people who want to support you, that you have opportunities to learn and explore new information and try to step outside of your familiarity bias, and that you actually feel like you matter in the world and that you're having an impact on your community. And all of these things very much can be addressed within your environment in order to work on your overall mental state and just improve your mental health in general. So anyways, I really hope that you learned a little bit about how your environment can impact your mental health. If you have any experiences you might like to share about issues you've had with your environment and how you've addressed them, or any tips at all in addressing environmental problems and how they impact people's mental health, please share all that below. Every little bit of support makes a huge difference in anyone trying to get help with their mental health. And thank you so much again for watching. Please join me again next week where I try again to share a little something I've learned in life.